I've been sitting here thinking about Rick Beato's video on what makes it great about everybody wants to rule the world. And I love Rick's videos, but a lot of times they're not about what makes it great. They're just about what makes it. And for this song, he's talking about this triplet figure. And for me, calling it triplets is just vastly underselling it. That's like the least interesting thing about it. For me, what makes art great and music great often is when it's ambiguous. You know, it's like the difference between prose and poetry. You know, poetry can express different meanings at the same time. And that's happening in this figure. So let's talk about it. So Rick describes this as a 6-note introduction. I don't think that's right. I think it's a 5-note introduction that leads right into this triplet figure. And if you think of it as a 6-note introduction, then the triplets start on the A, but they don't. The triplets start on the F sharp. So the ambiguity here has to do with the underlying meter context of the entire piece is duple. Do, day, do, day, do, day, do, day, do, day, do, day. So these triplets fit into that do, day, do, day, do, day, do, day. So with the triplets, it's do-da-dee, day-da-dee, do-da-dee, day-da-dee, do-da-dee, day-da-dee, do-da-dee, day-da-dee. But if you just listen to the F sharps, you just get... So that's do-dee-da, do-dee-da, which is pretty cool. And then you have these dyads up here. F sharp A, F sharp B, F sharp A. So you get the F sharp A dyad, then F sharp B, then F sharp A, and then the pattern repeats. So how do you feel it? As 3 groups of 2 or 2 groups of 3? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Not that way, because the overall context is duple. And I think that's the helpful thing to remember. Do, day, do, day, do, day, do, day. Then I get the feel right. Interesting. So that's what makes it great, is the ambiguity, not just that there's triplets. Dee doo da dee day da 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 dee doo. So I have a correction and a couple of additions to my Everybody Wants to Rule the World video from a couple of days ago, which I will link in the description. So Rick Beato says this is a 6-note introduction. I said the other day it's a 5-note introduction. It's a 4-note introduction. The 5th note is the guitar entrance on a pickup. Dee-doo-da-dee-doo-da-dee-doo-da-dee-doo-da-dee. You can actually hear that same little figure once in the 2nd verse, and I think it's just 4 notes. I could be wrong, could be 5 notes, but I think it's 4. Either way, the guitar definitely comes in on the pickup. So there's so much going on there, our ears get confused. We're still processing this short little introduction, and then the guitar comes in on the pickup, then percussion and voices come in on the downbeat. Not to mention that once you've heard the song once and you know it's in that triple feel, do-da-dee, day-da-dee, totally makes sense that you'd want to hear this as 6 notes, do-da-dee, day-da-dee. But that puts your triplets starting on this note, which puts you 1 microbeat off when the drum kit comes in a few measures later. Other cool stuff. This commenter pointed out that the accents are on the 2nd and 4th and 6th notes of this figure. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba, which is pretty cool. Other thing I think is neat is that if you listen to the first half of that figure, it contains the melodic contour of the whole figure. Last but not least, I think it's pretty cool that this, I don't know, I kind of feel that as like a pyramid shape, I guess, because that's what it would look like in notation. But then the 2nd half of it is kind of like an upside down pyramid shape, because that's what that would look like in notation. With regard to piano technique, and yes, I know this lick is on guitar in the recording, but I'm much better at piano, so that's what you're going to get. So this is what we call single rotations, when we go left, right, left, right, left, right. What's neat is that if we look at the bigger beats, it's still single rotations, but bigger ones. Left, right, left, right. So if you organize it that way, it'll help you play it on piano, which I guess it's actually much easier on guitar, because then you're just alternating strings and you have to make sure your pinky is on the high note on the second microbeat. To the extent that we're talking about whether Rick Beato's right or I'm right, he and I have both failed as music educators. He's succeeded pretty well as an online personality. Same with Adam Neely. But if you're talking about whether they're right or wrong, rather than thinking through the musical content for yourself, they have lost. That's an L for you, because you didn't learn music. All you learned is that they're really smart, so I'm going to let them think and talk for me, which is a dangerous thing in any culture. But this isn't just a problem for online culture, it's a problem from college professors all the way down to your local neighborhood piano teacher. It's so much easier for teachers to tell you what to do rather than to give you tools to think for yourself. The fact that we need formal instruction for basic music making at all is an indication of how unmusical we've become as a culture. It doesn't help when music educators at all levels don't know how to get a culture that's listening impoverished to the first rungs of the ladder so that they can really start learning. Since you mentioned it, I'm going to throw down the gauntlet a little bit. So Rick Beato is an incredibly skilled player, and he's also a very knowledgeable musician. His experience with music production and studio recording is way beyond mine. We have some overlap in our performing experience. Of course, I play piano, he plays guitar. We both played a bunch of rock gigs, I'm sure. He's played a lot more jazz gigs. I've played a lot more church and symphony gigs. Here's what I've got that I don't think he or Adam Neely has. I've spent a lot of time studying the physical motions required to play efficiently at the piano, and I've also spent a lot of time studying the research on how we learn music from newborns on up. That's critical for you to understand, because I think so many musicians go through the education process, then they're way up here, and they try to teach beginners who want to learn, but they've already forgotten how that process takes place. To make this relevant to you, I know Rick Beato sells his Beato book on his channel, and there's probably a lot of smart stuff in that book. I know he spends a lot of time on his channel talking about interval training and relative pitch. The problem is, for most learners, that's going to be a barrier unless you first learn to recognize a resting tone and to recognize tonal patterns. An interval itself lacks tonal context, and it also lacks musical meaning. Before you buy his course, I recommend you buy my course, which is based on the learning process we go through when we actually do learn music.